All right, here we go. Today we have Anthony Arillotta, former boss of the Connecticut, Massachusetts Genovese Mafia faction. Welcome back to VladTV.
How you doing, Vlad? Good to be here.
Yeah, man. We had a very epic interview last time.
We did.
Yeah. A lot of people watched it.
A lot of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we have more stuff to talk about today. So like you said, you're part of the Connecticut, Massachusetts faction of Genovese.
Right.
Now, Genovese originally started in New York.
New York.
Okay. And describe to me the history of Genovese and how it originally started.
So the five families back in the day, when you read the history books, you get, Lucky Luciano when they started, dividing up the old gangs into, natural families. They started making organized crime. I think it was Lucky Luciano family became the Genovese family, and they ended up having the five major families of New York. Barano, Colombo, Lucchese, Gambino, Genovese. Genovese being one of the biggest ones, Vito Genovese, they took it after his name. There was a big presence outside of New York, like there's Genovese, and I'm jumping way ahead like to present day, but like New Jersey, there's a faction down in Florida, there's our faction was in Western Mass, but we had all into Connecticut, going into, most of Connecticut. There was Gambinos there was Patriarchas, there was other Colombos and notorious guys running through Connecticut that a lot of people don't get recognition because you never hear about Connecticut and Western Mass. You always hear about Boston and New York. So you don't hear these notorious gangsters, individuals, Murder Inc. guys, Whitey Tropiano, Billy Grasso out of Connecticut, our area, Western Mass. Big Nose Sam was at the Appalachian meeting in '57. So the faction, there's actually a book written about it, how it got started in Springfield back in the day in the early 1900s with bootleggers. And then it ended up becoming through Mike Miranda was a Genovese underboss, big guy out in indirectly with New York. He had family in the Springfield, Massachusetts, city, and they just developed another faction of the Genovese family, and since the early 1930s, it just became a strong presence going through Springfield. They had a captain, which was like in our area back then was called Big Nose Sam. He was the boss. But you had a captain. He was a captain in the overall family. He was boss of Connecticut and Massachusetts, Central, Western Mass. Patriarchs were in Boston and Providence, Rhode Island. Their headquarters were with the Patriarchs.
Okay, because from what I understand, the Springfield faction goes back to the 1920s.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay, and the whole time, would the Springfield and Connecticut factions, would they kick back money to New York?
Never. So that they got established in, like you said, the 20s. When we go back to Big Nose Sam, that was like the present. He took over somewhere in the 40s, and he lasted all the way up into 1984.
Right. I actually have the breakdown of the Springfield faction. So originally, there's Carlo Senis.
That's way back. Yeah.
Right. That's 1920, 1921.
He gets murdered.
1921.
My friends, who I'm friends with today, his family, his grandfather actually killed him.
Oh.
Killed him back then. He wrote a book about it. So it explains everything about the Springfield Mafia back in that pre days. And then he's doing another one now for the present days. But going back to what you're talking about with the Siniscalchi and the Fioris, yeah. I'm sure you're going to mention them, right?
Well, yeah. What was the reason for Carlo Siniscalchi getting murdered?
There was a disrespect, from what I take it. He said, my grandfather always said that he was, they're Calabrese. I'm a Calabrese. And Calabria in Italy we come from. And he was disrespected. My grandfather always said he was spit on. The guy spit in his face. But the guy's grandson, who it was, said he slapped him. I believe it was a disrespect, either a slap or he spit on him, disrespected him. And the guy just went and killed him. I think it was on Union Street in the south end of Springfield, where the Italians all were for decades. And so that's what I believe it was over.
Okay, so he got taken over by Antonio Miranda?
Yep, the Mirandas were there, yep.
Okay, so he went from 1921 to 1930, and he died in 1930. I guess natural causes?
You know, I don't really know that. I know there was a lady involved, Pasqualina Albano. You got her in there? Like, she was like, you know, running. They ended up killing her.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was...
So it was a female boss?
Yeah, there was like, you know, it's interesting.
Has that ever happened? I've never heard, all the Mafia guys I've interviewed, I've never, ever heard of a female boss.
Yeah, you got to do a little bit. It's in the book, and he explains it all, but she ended up getting shot, I don't know, like 20 times. They ended up killing her. She was, I think she was married to Miranda. And then he got killed, or he died. She ended up marrying this guy, the new boss, Fiore. And I don't know if he got killed or they were going to kill him, but they killed her. And he eventually, I think, ends up getting killed, Fiore guy. And then it leads into, you know, I know Sam was somewhere along in the 40s. There's a big history back in that early days that, you know, people would be very interested in reading about, you know, back with the bootlegging, and that's when all the Italians, and also Springfield, there was a lot of Italians. When you say like the woman, there's a small couple towns in Naples, Quindici and Brugliano, and a lot of, you know, like when people immigrate, a lot of those Italians come to Springfield, Mass. You know, like where'd you go? I went to Springfield. You tell your family. Now they come here, and so their two small towns get loaded with it. There was wars in Italy, and like you said, with the woman actually get involved. The woman help out their gangster, you know, family, because, you know, it's such small towns that they can't travel about. They got to hide in trunks. They need their wives to get involved in their rackets and crimes.
I mean, is there such a thing as a made woman?
I never seen it, you know. And back then, I think it was people didn't start getting made and organized until I think the 30s. Okay. You know, with structured mafia. So, I mean, I believe there was women involved, just like when you go back and you see like the Harlem, you know, the Harlem stories with the numbers, and you see the Queen ladies and all that. You know, I believe women were involved, and, you know.
But not officially.
Yeah, not made. I never knew of made. Maybe in Italy they would, but I never heard it.
Right. I mean, because when you look at, for example, other criminal organizations, like the cartels, there was, you know, Griselda Blanco, who was the godmother, who was responsible for like 250 plus murders in Miami and was literally pushing billions of dollars worth of cocaine.
Right.
But I haven't seen that in the Italian mafia. Is it because, I don't know, machismo or whatever else, or is it other reasons, you think?
Well, I think with Griselda, she was just a woman that was in the drug business, made a lot of money, and then with money you can have people working for you, and she had a lot of crazy hitmen and crazy drug dealers, and I think that's how she rose to power. What I think makes it different is the Italians actually became organized to where there was a family where you get inducted into. And women and children are never involved in that. Like, you know, we would never tell my wife, the crimes I committed, what I'm committing, murders that I committed, anything to do with that. You would want to keep your wife and children, you know, especially the daughters, away from that life. You know, I wouldn't even want to bring my son into that life, but it's more structured than like, you know, seeing like a drug dealer being a woman and being a wild woman shooting people. I mean, I'm sure you could see that especially with Griselda. Yeah. But they don't have the, you know, like a format where, like, she was the boss, but boss of what? Like, how do they don't have an induction ceremony. Like, you know, she was just the boss of her, like a crew. Yeah. Like a neighborhood crew, but she was just from Colombia and, you know, branched into the United States.
Yeah, I interviewed Michael Corleone Blanco, the youngest son. The stories he told me were absolutely insane.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, they ended up killing her, right?
They did in Colombia. Yeah, a drive-by, basically, off a motorcycle.
Yeah.
Which is the same way she was getting certain people killed and so forth. So
that's something.
Okay, so then Salvatore Big Nose Cafari?
Yep.
1930 to 1983. So he had a 53-year run?
He did, yeah. He was an old school, you know, he was loved and feared. Old school mafia don. He was at the Appalachian meeting when they all went there and got arrested. He built up he was so respected that the guys that he made underneath him were all notorious gangsters in the Western Mass, Connecticut area. A lot of murders back then. And he ran it all the way up into 83.
Okay. And did you know him to a certain degree?
Yeah. So my uncle was his driver.
Ha.
So I was a little kid and my uncle lived across the street from me. We grew up down the south end of Springfield. That's where all the wise guys hung around. I would get out of school. Their headquarters was right there, right in the south end. So Sam had his office, they called it, down the south end. Go there, hang around, and give you $20 to go play the machines, go to the park and play. I would always get a ride home with, his name was Donnie Pepe. He was the driver for Big Nose Sam. And so they always went to the same Italian restaurants. They were friends with my family. My father owned a store, I told you back in our last interview, fruit and produce, vegetable, Italian meats. They always went there shopping. So that I would see them coming in the store and see them at restaurants and see them always hanging around, the presence of all of them. Because there was a huge presence in the Springfield city, the city of Springfield, of organized crime. They did a newspaper article in 2006 saying Springfield, this is in the Boston Herald, we had as many associates and made members per capita than any of the strongholds in the country. And that counts Brooklyn. We know Brooklyn and the Bronx and our, mafia heaven for mobsters. But per capita, we had a big presence in our area.
Okay. And then after Big Nose Sam was Francesco Skyball Schibelli?
Yes.
Okay. So what was his story?
So he's a violent little guy, participated in plenty of murders. A lot of them aren't even public. Like there's murders that he was involved in. He walked in right into a place one time, blew a guy's head off in a downtown Springfield restaurant. And nobody knows about a lot of the murders that took place with him. Violent little guy. He was like 5'3".
Wow.
Yeah, and
he Joe Pesci kind of character.
Yeah, he was just he had the fear, and he was more feared than Big Nose Sam was. Like Sam was a fair man. Sam was, if you went to him, he was for the people. He would be fair, and like not just because you were mafia. He would be fair if there was a decision to make, and people really, they loved the man and they respected him and they feared him. With Skyball, they just feared him. They hated him. And even his mafia guys, knew he was a treacherous devil boss, just a greedy. And so he wasn't loved, but he was definitely feared. He ran, and when I say they ran it, they had Connecticut, Western Mass, Central Mass. That was all ours. At that time, theirs. And he was so treacherous that they wasn't going to give him the position. They were going to give it to this guy Mario Fiore. And Mario Fiore was related to the guy Miranda that you were talking about. The guy Antonio Miranda, it was the guy Mike Miranda, who was the big guy with the Genovese family in New York. So Mario Fiore was going to get the spot. He didn't want it. He was kind of like inactive in the 80s. They used to do junkets and gambling, things like that. So he was kind of like inactive, and he didn't want the position. Skyball ended up taking it, and he ruled for quite some time. He was he was there for a while.
Yeah, 83 to 98.
83 to 98. He went in prison for a little bit in between, but yeah, he was there till 98.
Right.
I would say even earlier than 98. They probably say 98. I think he died in 2000, but...
Yeah, they say he retired in 98, he died in 2000, but who knows?
But that's wrong. It was 96-ish. He was 96 that he was... he got actually... So his story, he got taken down. If you keep going out, Bruno, you're going to get to... He was a boss. Mm-hmm. Bruno went to New York beefing on him that, he was getting older. He was forgetting things. He wasn't as top of his game. He was beefing to the bosses in New York. Because overall, the bosses of the Genovese family are in New York. So they have the last say, not with money. We controlled our own rackets. No money went down there until later on, but no money went down there. But it was, if someone was going to get murdered, if somebody was beefing on somebody. So in this case, Bruno was beefing on Skyball, like I was saying, telling him he was losing his fastball. He was, getting like slow, maybe a little dementia. Bruno thought he was going to get his position. They take Skyball down, meaning they demote him. They bump up, instead of Bruno, they bump up his brother, which you're going to get to next, Albert Babeshabelli. He takes over, and that was in 96. I know it was in 96 because there was they made a guy, Italian guy, kid came from Italy, and Baba straightened him out, and that was like in 96. And so Baba was the boss at that time.
So how many people do you think Skyball killed?
Oh, there had to be, there was one family, they had to kill this one guy. His name was Fliggy Pasquarelli. And it was a beef over something to do with the numbers, and they had to kill this guy, but he was a sharp gangster. You couldn't get at him, and he was always with someone, and they ended up killing him, his girlfriend, and they had a pet dog, a little dog, and the car, and you never seen any of it again. The car, the dog, the girl, and him just disappeared. And that was him and his brother Baba. And Baba was actually very close with this guy, but like close. Like I think he was best man at his wedding. So the story went that when they killed these people and they disappeared, Baba took it really bad. But, if you get an order to kill, you have to do it. So they took out this family, and he took it. I heard he didn't come out of his house for like 3 weeks. He was really upset over the murders that they had to, killing them people. But Skyball killed, I would say he's got at least definitely a dozen with him. And then that's not counting, that's counting like giving orders and being, but he was a type that was, even when I was at a meeting with him at Bruno's restaurant when he got taken down and Baba was officially boss. This was again like a 96-ish. Yeah, no, it was like 97-ish, right around there. And I remember him telling Baba and Bruno, he goes, if you need me, he goes, I'm, with there. And he went like this with his finger, like, if you still need me for any of this, I'm there. Even though when he got demoted. So he was a violent little guy and wouldn't think, so with him, when he goes to a sit down, he was, he wouldn't think something of picking up an ashtray and smashing over someone's head, putting his hands on you. He was a little devil. But, not only that, he's dangerous with the gun. All those short guys really are dangerous with a gun. They have to be because physically, they're not, how tough can they be when it comes to get that position? They got to be dangerous with the gun.
When I interviewed Sammy the Bull last time, we talked about Jimmy Hoffa.
Okay.
And he said he knows for a fact that the Genovese Mafia killed Jimmy Hoffa.
I would agree with that when you think about it, because this whole beef was with Tony Provenzano, and he was a Genovese powerful captain. And I don't believe anything with that movie. With the I didn't even watch it. I didn't even watch it. But when I was in prison,
everyone I talked to said it's all nonsense.
Yeah, but I was in the prison. This was back in the 90s. I don't know when it was. I've been, it could have been 05-ish. But I read that book. I Heard You Paint Houses.
Yeah,
and I knew that book was kind of bullshit. And then obviously when the movie came out, I never watched it, but I just knew it was going to be bullshit. But I would say definitely, from what I always heard, and I don't have no inside information on that, but Tony Provenzano was a major enemy of Hoffa. And back then, you can't put your hands on a made guy. That lasted all the way up until early 2000s. Even, if you put your hand on a made guy, there was a guy, Billy Grasso, there was a beef in our area. He was a notorious underboss of the Patriarchas, and they had an argument, and there was a made guy in our area, Gaetano Milano, and this guy, Tony Liquori, put his hands on him, not in a bad way, just to keep him away from the argument and everything. And the guy told him, he goes, "You're lucky." He goes, "You ever put your hands on one of us again, I'll chop him off." And that's just how it was. So he put his hands on the guy Provenzano, from what they say, and that's another thing, a reason I could assume that he got killed.
You mean Hoffa put his hands
on the guy.
Was it like an argument that turned into a fist fight? Or?
I don't know. I just know they had bad blood from everything that you read about and hear about. And not from inside knowledge, but I heard that there was 2 guys with the Genovese family that ended up killing them. I mean, that's nothing that I know personally or secretly, but it would make sense that, that being that it was a Genovese family with the unions, especially, you wanted back in with the unions. Now you're messing with the all 5 family, the whole, never mind 5, the Back then, there was like probably 19 active families. The unions were a big part of that. So he was upsetting a lot of people there. He was fighting with a major guy in the Genovese family. It would make sense that if there was the Genovese family with this guy, Tony Pro, that he would send a couple of guys from the Genovese family. Detroit would set him up. The car he got into would be a Detroit setup. Made the shooters were probably the Genovese guys. And wherever he went after that, who knows?
I mean, how were bodies disposed of during that era? I remember Michael Franzese, he claims he knows what happened, but he wouldn't say it. He would say Hoffa is in a very wet place right now.
You know, if you know, then what's this big secret? Everyone's dead that was involved in it. And, you know, I mean, it's not like you were involved in it. Yeah. And if I knew where he was and I had knowledge, I'm not going to get in trouble by saying, yeah, he's in the ocean or anything, you know?
Yeah.
So, but getting rid of bodies, the best way always is to having the body disappeared. If you ever were going to take part in a murder, you always want the body to never be seen. But that's hard to do in a lot of cases. It's easy to do with the mafia because we have rules. So if the boss calls you in or you got to go to a sit down, guy comes in like this room right here and we're going to have a sit down and these two guys come and shoot him. You know, he thinks he's having a beef over some gambling thing. Now we got the body here and we got a hole dug somewhere. You know, some sickos, they like to cut them up and put them in garbage bags and get rid of it that way, you know. You have a hole. Some guys put them in acid. That guy Carneglia was putting bodies in acid. But the best way is getting a hole and having it ready. You know, you kill the guy. You have a team, whatever, the two guys, whatever, and then just bury them. And that's the best way to do it. The other way brings a lot of law enforcement, heat, scrutiny, and I think a lot of, you hear a lot of stories, not just Hoffa, but back then, like I said, those people that Skyball killed, you never heard from them again.
Okay, so after Skyball was Adolfo, Big Al, Bruno.
No.
No?
No.
Who am I missing?
Baba, Albert.
Oh, yeah, right. You mentioned that.
Albert
right.
took over from 96 to 98. I mean, 90 to 2000. And they got arrested in a big case, racketeering case. There was about 9 of them. And he took a pinch with that case. Racketeering, extortions. So he was the boss. And at that time, he was getting older. So he was passing the reign to Anthony DeLabo. You got him in there as boss? Because I think you went to Bruno. He didn't really have a chance. That's why you don't see him in that lineup. But you'll read articles about him. Anthony DeLabo was boss while Baba was boss. And what was happening was Baba was getting older. He was worth $100 million. I mean, just loaded him and his family and everything. So he was past. Anthony was like in his at that time probably in his late 50s. You know, so still a young enough guy. And he was loyal to Baba. They didn't like Bruno, so Baba's looking to put him in there. A young guy, he'll carry it the rest of the time. Bruno can't bother Baba's family. And that was the plan, the way it was going to go. But DeLabo gets indicted with Baba in that 2000 case.
Okay, so then after that is Big Al.
After that, so then in 2001, while that case is going on, they think they're going to, well, they did. DeLabo got 3 years for it. A lot of them they all got prison sentence, but short time, you know, like 2 years, 3 years. But Baba, now Bruno's beefing on him now. He's starting to get a little bit slow, you know, like forgetful on things. He's got a ton of money. He's under indictment. And, you know, he's going to either get prison time or he's going to get house arrest or some sort of probation. It's going to restrict him from running the family. So Bruno's using this as a way to get to New York to get him and implement him as boss. And it works. In 2001, Bruno becomes the official boss of the Genovese family in Connecticut and Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then you're involved in his murder on November 23rd, 2003.
Right.
So then you take over.
Right. So at that point, as that was transpiring, I got made in 2003 in August. And there was a lot of things going on at that time with the Genovese family in New York. They were switching who was controlling the Connecticut and Mass areas, factions. And they put this guy up, Arty Nigro. That's who I got made under. He had me go shoot the guy in New York, and I got made because of that. So they were, and this is where it's a long, long story, but real short. They were looking to demote Bruno, take him down, make him a soldier, and I was made at this point. So I kind of like had power. I had all the power there was. Meaning is, and if you know about organized crime, New York is where the family is. That's where the power is. And I got made in New York City by the bosses of the Genovese family. So right alone, that gives me the power over anything outside of New York because I'm direct with the boss. I report directly to him. That makes me boss of the most powerful guy outside of New York because I'm represented by the biggest and strongest family, and I got made with him. So Bruno was going to be taken down to a soldier. I already had the position of power, but jump forward, he gets murdered in 2003 in November, and I was involved in that, yes.
Okay, so you were the boss from 2003 to 2009.
10, yeah.
2010. Okay, and then you cooperated.
Right.
And then at that point, well, it says 2009.
Yeah, I didn't go to arrest until 2010, so it was 2010.
2010. Okay, so tell me about Arty Nigro.
So Arty Nigro, I was going down with Bruno to New York. I start meeting higher-ups in the other families and in the Genovese family. Arty Nigro was a soldier. He was under Ernie Muscarella, a very powerful boss in the Genovese family. At that time, Vincent the Chin was in prison. They were using Quiet Dom. They were using, as bosses. He was under indictment. He was going to prison. So when I was getting proposed to get made, they had a family. Had a panel of 3. One of that panel was Ernie Muscarella. He's going to prison for 5 years. He wants Arty Nigro to take his position on the panel. The other 2 bosses, Mario Gigante, Larry Dentigo, they don't want him there. 2 powerful bosses that were on the panel with him. So they don't want him there, but Ernie wins, gets Arty Nigro put in the position as acting boss. So that was in 2003. He takes over for the Genovese factions of he's on the panel now from 2003. And he's the official boss of Connecticut and Mass. So he's my boss. And he went from a soldier to a boss. I mean, that's like crazy. Like that's like, he was a soldier, and the Genovese family had powerful captains. And one of them was Pat DeLuca. When this was transpiring, I knew that he was becoming boss because he had this guy who was around him who ended up being an informant, John Bologna. I shot the guy in New York for him. He was telling me everything. He was going to be, he was official boss. Nobody else knew that. So he went from soldier to boss. He had to tell it to Pat DeLuca that he was actually now boss, and Pat was a captain, that he reports to him now. But they were close. He wanted him to tell him, in a nice way where there's no disrespect because they were close. So Arty becomes a boss. I don't think he should have been in that position. In fact, I don't think anybody that knows, I think if everything happened the way he did, he would have got clipped. If he beat that case and he got out, they would have killed him for the guy that he brought him around, the informant, that we were told that he was an informant. And I asked him permission to kill the guy, and he was protecting him. So I believe if he beat the case and he got out, they would have killed him.
Right, because he
was a bad boss, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Greedy, bad, and the money never went down to New York ever until he became boss. So that when you ask me about money going down there, it never went down there. But when he took over as boss, they were trying to, steal made guys, associates, have money that, siphon down there. They were trying to, because he was the boss, technically the boss of everybody reports to him. And he had this piece of shit, John Bologna, that was, his middleman, who wasn't even a made guy. We were told he was an informant. So he was a bad boss, a greedy boss, and he shouldn't have been in the position.
Right, because he went to prison in 2011?
No, he went to prison, the second time in 2010, but he was already in 2005, he got 5 years.
Okay.
So he was doing his 5-year sentence. He was getting ready to come home, and he gets indicted with me, on the murder, racketeer, and death penalty case for the murder of Bruno.
Okay, because then after him was Eugene, Rooster, Onofrio?
Well, so now you're like, Arty was officially with the Genovese family in New York. He's a New York boss. Rooster is a New Haven, Connecticut guy. He was around when Bruno was going to make him into the family back in 2003. Bruno was going to make about 5-6 guys. In fact, I was one of them proposed under Bruno. Rooster was one of the guys but he's from Connecticut. He was around Matty the Horse, who was another boss of the Genovese family. Matty the Horse, big name, right? So he was in prison with him. Matty wanted to put him with us because he's from Connecticut, and Bruno was going to make him. Bruno gets killed and Rooster runs away, and that's it. Rooster doesn't get made. I come out of prison in 2008. He was, around in Connecticut. He still doesn't come around. 2010, I go away, and then I heard they straighten him out. And that's what those guys do in New York. So I heard that they straightened out Rooster. They put him down, if you read the things and everything, like he was boss of Mulberry Street in New York. He's from New Haven, Connecticut. The reason why they do that, because they're very smart. They don't want the heat. They don't want to go to prison. They don't want to have nothing to do. They insulate themselves. So they get a dummy like him, right? Old man, a dummy. I think he was in his 70s, right? They get him and say, oh, you're going to be the boss. Not only that, we're going to make you, and you're going to be the boss. And you're going to have control of all Connecticut and Mass. Guy's in his 70s. I think he lasted 2 years. He had an FBI driving him around. He had an informant, another guy that infiltrated the family with that case with the 47 of them, with Merlino and all them. The guy Rubio, he was an informant. So he had him around him, and they all got arrested. So he lasted 2 years, and they all went to prison.
Well, then after him was Albert the Animal Calvanisi?
Right. So Albert's my friend that I grew up with. He's a Springfield faction guy. I'm still friends with him to this day. He's and that's another thing that he's the most feared gangster in outside of New York in our area. But he's not what they describe him to be in the he's not a made man. Yeah, he's not made.
So how could he be the boss?
But that's because they're newspaper people write that.
Okay.
And they tell
so he
them
wasn't
bullshit.
actually the boss.
He was the most feared guy, but no, he didn't want nothing to do with structure and being the boss, and he had his own money on the streets, loan shark. He had his own sport. He never did sports. He was just a ruthless loan shark is what he was. And that's really what he was. He was a loan shark, and he was his own boss and his own way. And he was like that his whole life. And he just they're right. He has a feared reputation, the most out of anybody that I grew up with in that area. But he was not a made man. He didn't report to anybody in New York. He wasn't anything to do with the structure of the mafia. He didn't want nothing to do with it. And that's just how he is.
Why the name The Animal?
That's a name that's another thing. I never even knew that they called him an animal. We used to call him, crazy. As a younger kid growing up, he was involved in a dispute where a guy got shot 5 times in his face. And so we always looked up to him as far as, he was like 5 years older than us. You always look up to the older guys, the most violent. He was a money maker, and everybody was afraid of him, when we were younger. So they, the newspapers they give a couple other guys in those, they gave one guy, they call him the Shark. They just make up names and give him the names,
Okay, because, according to reports, he was the boss from 2018 to 2024.
He wasn't.
And they say he was overthrown by Ralph Santaniello?
Right, that's another. So Ralphie was the best man in my wedding.
Okay, so you know Ralph.
Yeah, so
right. They're saying he's the current boss.
No, he's not even made. They're having guys that do podcasts say they know. So Ralphie was, like I said, he was in my crew back in the day. I used to have him, I had such a big crew and so many rackets going on that he was involved in one of my sports gambling, loan sharking, and numbers. He would run that for me, sports bookmaking and that. So We ended up getting arrested at his house. The FBI put in listening devices in his house. That's when we got arrested in 2005, and that's when I got a 3 to 3.5 year sentence with the state and 2.5 with the feds. So Ralphie was around me. I go arrested 2010. I'm no longer in that stuff. Rooster becomes boss, and he tells him, and this kid wants his button bad. Like, there's no reason to have your button today. There's no money on the streets where you can support a crew. So he wants his button bad. He wants to get made. Rooster's the fish, he's the guy that they put in that position to be boss. They put him up like a lightning rod, and only a dummy would have took that at his age at 70. So he's gonna tell these guys, yeah, I'm gonna make you, and I'm gonna make you a made man. And to them, that that's what this kid Ralphie wants. He's told people. I came home in 2017. He was already in prison or under indictment. Yeah, he was under indictment. He was going to prison. He got 4 years for that case. And 4 or 5 years. And he told people like 3 different times he was a made guy. He wasn't made. And who cares even if he was? And then he got out of prison in around 2021, 2020, 2019. And the same exact thing. He tells people he got his button and this and that. You never would tell anybody that anyways. And even if he did, who cares? It ain't nothing what it is when I was there or in the past when you named all those other bosses.
Well, you were charged with the murders of Bruno and Gary Westerman.
Yeah.
Which you cooperated on.
Yeah.
Were you accused of any other murders?
I was accused of attempted murders. I pled guilty to other conspiracy to murders where they actually didn't die. And, any murder that happened in that area, we got the blame. Like they thought me or my crew had something to do with it. But no, I never, that was it. That was the total.
Were you given a proffer agreement, or was it just a cooperation in exchange for leniency on your sentencing?
So what happens is I knew I was getting indicted in 2010 when I was on the streets. Mm-hmm. So I'm preparing to go to trial and, beat the case, get a lawyer. My lawyer is a Massachusetts attorney. He gets me John Mitchell, who's a very high-profile attorney out of New York City. He represented Gotti and everything. So when I'm under indictment for this case, I'm looking to fight the case, and then you get all the discovery. This guy that Arty put us with, he's wearing a wire. He's been an informant. Arty wouldn't let me kill him. But the thing that drove the nail home was when he comes up and he says, Arty's not in the system. They thought Arty cooperated. That the Genovese family in New York are worried sick. So that led to my cooperation and getting out of that. When you do a proffer, so what happens is, and those are very hard decisions when it comes to that, time. It's not like, you're sitting there and it's a process where you don't want to ever, be in. Thank God I did do what I did. But it starts off with, and they don't do that for anyone. Anybody, I bet you that 95% of people in prison wish they could get out of prison right now if they had an opportunity. So and they're not just going to be like, oh, well, you killed 5 people here. We want you to cooperate, and we're going to give you like a Sammy the Bull deal, 20 people, and give you 5 years. They're not doing that unless you have something high valuable to offer them, And in this case, I had that to offer them, and what you do is you reach out as an attorney proffer. In my case, that's what I did. You reach out with your attorney reaches out to the U.S. attorney and says, "Listen, there's a few things he might want to have a sit down with you." Like John Gotti Jr. did a proffer, same thing I did. Only he didn't have to follow through. They didn't take his proffer, and he had to end up going to trial. So when you do the proffer, they have to take you and believe what you're saying, number one, and it's got to be valuable enough to where they're going to let you get out of a death penalty case and a life imprisonment case. So it's not just like, I'm going to look what they did to Casso. He did proffers, was going to, 30-something murders. They didn't take him. The guy informant in my case, he did a proffer, cooperated. They ripped up his agreement because he didn't tell the truth. So they give it up. So you come out and you give an attorney proffer, and they have to accept it. While that was going on, you're waiting to hear back. I had 3 guys in my area from Mass, and I told them exactly what I'm doing and what I want them to do. I said I had all the evidence. They had 4 direct witnesses that could put us to the murder. Arty's not in the system. He's our boss. He's first on the indictment. I'm second. I said we're going to get life in prison. Let's just say there's a miracle and we beat the murder. We're not beating the racketeering. We're going to get 60 years for the racketeering with our criminal records. So I put word out to them and to join me in the decision that I had to make. So you hear back from them with the proffer if they're willing to take that. Now, I didn't even sit down. I was in Rhode Island being held at this time, waiting to go to New York. So it wasn't like a month and a half later that I actually got a chance to do a proffer. So they had a month and a half chance to, join me in this and understand, the evidence that they had. Hey, listen, if you guys are fine with rolling the dice and maybe you'll beat the case, then good luck to you, But if you don't, you're going to go to jail for the rest of your life. And so, yeah, that's how it gets broken down. And they have to accept you with that proffer agreement. Yeah, and that's when I finally proffered with them. Like, so when you proffer and sit down, say I proffered and sat down, and I try to make a deal, and they didn't accept it, I'm still going to be labeled as someone that cooperated. Just like John Jr. Gotti sat down with the government, and he tried to come up with, he proffered with them and come up with, and here's the thing, everybody would want to do what he tried to do because, yeah, I want to cooperate. Fuck my boss that put me with this informant that had a wire on that I wanted to kill and he wouldn't let me kill. He's the New York boss. Fuck him. I don't care what happens to him. But let's just say I want to protect guys that were around me. You can't do that. Like I want to say, you know how many times that backfired on people? Like say we killed someone and say, yeah, they didn't do it with me. These 2 guys did it with me. Or I did it by myself. Now, years later, it comes out, they getting some jammed up with stuff, and they say, well, I'll tell you about the murder that I didn't tell them about. Then it happened with Bobby DeLuca, with them in Providence, with Frank Salemi. Happens all the time. This guy I was in prison with, Philly Fay out of Philadelphia. Pete DeCrum was his boss out of Newark or wherever. They killed 5 guys. Phil didn't tell him about it. He wasn't going to do a day in prison. His boss ends up cooperating, tells him about the 4 or 5 murders that Phil did. This guy ends up going to do the rest of his life in prison. And the boss that ordered him is going to get a sweetheart of a deal. So it's a very, it's a treacherous road. You got to be very intelligent when you're playing that game. I probably did what no other guy did that ended up cooperating because I told my crew, the 3 guys, before I even sat down with anybody that what I was going to do and what I want them to do. So I don't think, that's ever been done. But yeah, it's a dangerous. You got to be very, you got to be intelligent when you're making that move because they can snap it away from you and you do that for nothing. You're labeled that you cooperated and you go to prison with that. You go to a pen and they'll do the same thing. They'll butcher you like they did Whitey Bulger.
Yeah, and I want to get to that part of the story as well. But what's happening right now in the hip hop world? There's a guy named Kefi D. I don't know if you're familiar with this story.
I heard the name and everything.
Yeah. Well, he was in the car when Tupac got killed.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And he had a proffer agreement. He was facing a major PCP case. So Greg Kading, who was the head investigator, met up with him and said, listen, tell us everything about the Tupac murder. We'll make this PCP case go away. So he said all the details, what led up to it, the shooting, what happened afterwards, everything else like that. And he basically was able to walk away from 25 years or possibly life in prison. After Greg Kading retired, he released some of the audio. So Kefi D starts doing, he wrote a book first, and then he starts doing interviews. And our interview was sort of the first major interview he did. He did other interviews as well. And just recently he got arrested and charged for Tupac's murder. And this is where kind of the gray area comes in, where even though he had a proffer agreement and what he said on that day couldn't be used against him, what they're saying is that the book and the interviews and everything else like that could be used against him because it was outside of the proffer.
I disagree with that because I'm going to tell you why. So first of all, he's not under oath when he talks to you. That's number one.
True.
So he could just be coming in here trying to be a badass like a lot of these guys do.
And that's his defense. His lawyer said that all of this is lies. He wasn't even Las Vegas when it happened. He was just trying to get a few dollars.
What it did is he put a lot of heat on himself by law enforcement and say, oh, they'll investigate, and maybe he was involved. And now he just led them into him. But by what he said, I mean, maybe if they investigated, they found out it was true. And then with his mouth, what he says, they'll use these videos as far as, look at it. He even said it in his book. He even said it here. But they're going to investigate first and make sure. Because there's so many bullshitters on the internet today. There's so many guys like, and I give you credit. You vet people, you do your job. You just don't let some jerk off come on here and tell a story and make up lies about his story and, copy people's stories and act like they were this bigger guy than what they were. A lot of podcasters, you do it, and a lot of, people do vet them and ask them the tough questions. But so many guys exaggerate and that's probably, to make it, they want to make money. They want to be relevant. They want to be badder than what they really weren't. I didn't have 2 murders. I had 12. Well, who'd you kill then? Who's the 12? You know what I'm saying? Like, I had 12 killings. Well, who are they? You pled guilty to 2. So it's like, but they want to make it like that. So in that case, so the proffer, the only way that can happen is if you proffered and evidence comes out of you participating in another murder that you never told them about. And it's got to be murder. It ain't going to be something stupid like, a gambling case or a loan sharking case or a drug case. It's got to be something serious, right? A big crime case, mostly murder. And that's why I said it's a dangerous game, and you have to be intelligent when it comes to that level. Because one little screw up, you even got to be intelligent to, like, I believe with Gas Pipe, what fucked up his deal was that you understand who the government's little golden gooses are. And it was Sammy the Bull, right? And he gave them Gotti, and it kind of like destroyed the notion of the mafia. Like, if a guy like Sammy the Bull could cooperate, the mafia is dead. And so they need that to stay there. And now Castle comes in and says, oh, see, Sammy killed more people. And Sammy was involved in drugs he never told you about. And so now that's going to fuck up a lot of shit with them. Because that could open up new trials for the people that Gravano was involved in. And so I believe that, oh, no, you're lying to us. You're not telling us everything. How could he be lying? He told you about 30-something murders he was in. And what did he do 3 other murders that he didn't tell you about? So it was 40 instead of 36? You know what I'm saying? So I believe, so you have to watch out when you go in there. Like, I had to watch out for this piece of shit Bologna. And it's come to find out there was a shooting that we did, and he never told him about it. And he died in prison. He died. He wasn't supposed to do 1 day in prison. He was wearing wires. He was informing. He was an informant in the 90s. We got told that he was an informant. The Gambinos told us. The Patriarchas told us. The rap family faction in my family area told us. The Babish Shibeli and his little rap crew, right? So they all told us that this guy was an informant. I asked Arty to kill him. I said, send him up. You'll never see the guy again. And he didn't. He protected him. In fact, he never sent him up again because he knew we were crazy enough to do it, because he never gave me permission to kill my brother-in-law, and we made him disappear. So he said, these guys are nuts. They're going to end up killing this guy. So he never sent him up. So yeah, you got to be, getting back to the proffer, if you're playing that game, you better hope that you murdered the guy yourself and you buried him, and it ain't ever going to surface and come back and bite you.
Yeah, I mean, one of my other guests, Terrence Gangster Williams, he's actually the brother of Birdman, who's the founder of Cash Money Records. He had a crew of guys called the Hot Boys, which, the rap group named themselves after this group, but it was him and 3 other guys. And he was doing 27 years, I think, in prison. And then they put, some other murders on him. So he did a proffer agreement where he admitted to 40 murders. And he implicated the 3 other guys that were in his crew who were all dead at the time.
Okay. So he
walked away.
That's a move, yeah.
Yeah, he ended up basically being freed after like 27 years or something.
Right, but how many murders was he in there for that?
He wasn't in there for any murders, but then
he gave him 40?
He gave him 40.
And they let him out?
They let him out.
Wow, that's crazy.
It's a lot of murders though. 40?
And nobody got in trouble for it. The 3 guys were dead.
3 guys were dead.
That's a true story?
True story.
See, that's hard to believe because, yeah, that's a hard one. But you're saying it, so it's got to be true.
Yeah, but we talked about it. If you talk about New Orleans in the 90s, it was like the number 1 or number 2 murder capital. 75% of murders were going unsolved.
Right.
These things were happening in broad daylight.
Right.
Nobody wanted to cooperate.
Right.
Everyone was too scared that they would get killed as cooperators, so no one saw anything. They would brag about the murders to their friends.
Right.
It was just
maybe closure
lawless.
for the families, and that's why.
Yeah, it was a lot of closure. I mean, 40 unsolved murders got solved that day.
Right, and the guy's pleading guilty, and they didn't know they were unsolved, so he's saying, I did it, and he still let him out of jail. That's crazy.
He did it, with his friend. This crew of 4 people were just terrorists, essentially.
There's another way. I never knew this, too, until I got into prison, but you could be doing a life sentence for a non-violent drug case, and you could be doing a life sentence, right, for, say, a big kingpin cocaine case where there was no murders, and you could actually get out of prison if you cooperate in prison. Say you saw a murder and they stabbed somebody and killed them, and they're saying witnesses. You see anything? No. You see anything? No. You see anything? No. Yes. You see anything? Yes. All right, we'll be in contact with you. Then they call you to the hospital. They say, okay. They brief you. Okay, what'd you see? I say, yeah, I saw those guys kill them, and all right. They ship him out of the hospital. He's a witness. He gets his life sentence reduced to 20 years. He's already got like 13 or 14 in. He's got another 3 or 4 to go.
Yeah. They moved to BC.
And that's called a Rule 35.
Okay.
So you can get out of prison, and, I never knew that one.
Well, you were cellmates with the Bonanno boss, Joe Massino.
Yeah.
Now, he has a very interesting story.
Yeah.
This was the first mafia boss to cooperate.
Was it? Was he the first?
The first. They actually call him the last Don.
Yeah, I know D'Arco was a boss for the Lucchese's. I don't know if it was before him but I know. Yeah, you're right. He was one of the first, if not the first. Yeah.
Yeah, he cooperated in 2002.
Yeah, so D'Arco must have been after then.
Yeah.
He was with the
when
gas
were you
pipe.
locked up with him?
So I was locked up with him in 2011 for about close to a year.
Oh, so this was after he cooperated.
Yeah, we were locked up in the same unit.
Well, the Joe Massino story is very interesting because, like I said, he was the first one to cooperate. He was facing life in prison and didn't want to do it. So I interviewed Dominic Sacali, who basically laid out the story about how he did it. And it was very calculating. It was almost like a movie in a way where, he really didn't have anything to offer to get out of this.
Who didn't?
Joe Massino.
Of course he did.
Well,
go ahead.
let me get to that. Let me
get
get to that. So initially, they felt he didn't have anything to offer in terms of cooperation. But before he went in, he put a word out that one of the other guys, Vinny Basciano, should kill the prosecutor in his case. So then, when Vinny was in jail with him, they had a kind of a conversation about it, and Joe Massino was wearing a wire. So he went to the authorities and said, I got something for you. There's a hit out on the prosecutor. But this was something that he kind of put together, and he sort of put the seed in and ultimately used it to get out of doing life in prison.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about. Well, it don't make sense with the part where he already was in there wearing the wire. So the feds already wanted him in there wearing the wire. He was already getting information by wearing the wire, and he was getting information on other murders
but
and plots.
I guess he wore the wire to prove that there's a hit out on the prosecutor.
Well, listen, I know Dominic. I don't know him great. I talked with him on, a few times, and I'm sure he knows a lot more because he was with the Bonannos.
Yes.
I can just tell you what I know. I was cellies with Joe. I wasn't in his crew. I was active down there at the time when all that stuff was taking place. Even Joe was arrested. But Joe went to trial on his case and was found guilty. And then he reached immediately out to the to reach out to the judge to tell him he wanted to sit down with the prosecutors.
Right.
So that's what happened. First of all, he rolled the dice and tried to get found innocent, right? And he cooperated instead of doing it before. He said, maybe I got a shot to beat this case and, you know, I'll win. But he didn't. So he's going to get life in prison. Before he's going to get sentenced now, he sits down with the government. He's got a lot to offer them because he was only charged with, I think, 5 or 6 murders, and he gives them another 8. That's number one. So you just said the guy there that did 27, they let him out, right? And they let him out. So he's got another 8. That's another 8 cases closed. He's got another $8 million to give him. He had $8 million in gold bars and cash. This is what he told me out of his own mouth. In his cellar at his house, $8 million. And he forfeited that to the government. But they allowed him to keep, I don't know, I think it was $14 million in properties that were bringing him in rentals and his supporting his wife and his family off those. So that was another thing that he had a way out with those extra murders. And then on top of it, he's already in prison. He's a boss. He's going to get sentenced. So it makes sense, send him up to MCC. And from what I always was understood, and this is coming from Joe Massino's mouth, was there was this guy, Randolph Pizzuto, something like that. Pizzolo.
Yeah.
So I guess Vinny, I don't know if that was part of Dominic's case, but they clipped him. And going back, I heard that there was rumor. There was the Quiet Dom's kid also got killed at this time. And I remember being on the street when Quiet Dom's kid got killed. And again, they told us that there could be a beef between us and the Bananos because they thought, I don't know if it was this Rudolph guy, Pizzola, killed Quiet Dom's son. So that was when Joe went to get wired up and talk to Vinny Basciano, he was asking him more or less about who killed the kid, Pizzola. Mm-hmm. And about, did he take out, what happened with Quiet Dom's kid? Because that was the boss. Quiet Dom was the Genovese boss. And, word is that he killed his own son, whatever. Quiet Dom had his own son killed. And I think that's what Vinny told him. He said, no, Quiet Dom had him whacked. And as far as the prosecutors, I guess there was a list that Vinny said he was Santeria type shit. He was trying to put but there was a list of them, not just the U.S. attorney, but it was also other, maybe the judge, the prosecutor, it was like a few people's name on that list. And I don't remember that getting brought up on the wiretaps. And if it was, it wouldn't really matter because what really would have mattered is the fact that Joe's going to testify in person against Vinny and the fact that he's got him talking about the Pizzolo murder.
Okay, so after Joe Massino cooperated as a boss, he still remained in prison?
So he was a boss. He ends up putting this guy, Vinny ends up being acting boss while Joe is going to prison. So Joe's rolling the dice. It takes a couple years for him to go to trial. So I think it was like 03 to 05 it took, or 02 to 04, something like that. So as he's waiting trial, Vinny's acting boss. Joe says that Vinny wasn't, just as usual, once the boss is away, all the rackets come in. The boss is supposed to be getting his end, and little by little it gets less and less. So Vinny wasn't keeping up with his end on the agreement of, giving him his money that he was supposed to be coming. And then people were getting killed and Joe wasn't given the okay on it. And he was like, Vinny was becoming the actual official boss of the family. This is coming from like Joe's mouth. But again, Dominic was out there at that time, so he would be more in the know on he was a captain in the Bonanno family. He has to be in the know. I'm just saying what Joe came out of Joe's mouth while me being locked up. So Joe is still boss, but he's in informing now after his conviction. But it doesn't come out right away. It doesn't come out until he goes to get sentenced and he receives 2 life sentences. Now he's got to wait and get a Rule 35 to get his 2 life sentences reduced to, I think he ended up doing like 13 years on it. I think he got arrested around 02-ish and I think they let him out around 2013.
Yep, 2013, he gets out and he goes into the Federal Witness Protection Program.
Yeah, I know somebody called me, yeah, and he was living in Cleveland.
Yeah, he passed away September of last year.
Yeah, and then he reached out through somebody. He was funny as hell in prison. I tell you, he had a belly out to here. You remember the guy, Jackie Gleason from the...
Yeah.
He reminded me of him.
Honeymooners?
Yeah, he was a funny bastard. We used to talk till 4 a.m, telling me all the old stories with the bananas and all that. Just a funny guy,
Well, Whitey Bulger, he was the boss of the Winter Hill Gang, which was an Irish mob in Somerville, Massachusetts, which is close to Boston. What did you know about Whitey Bulger when you were on the street?
So he was boss of Somerville was where Howie Winter started it and was where the gang was, but they had and it's not just Irish, it's could be Italian in that gang. It wasn't like the Italian Mafia where you got inducted into it. It was just you were part of that group, that crew, that gang, the Summerhill gang. Massachusetts had gangs like that back. They had Irish gang wars where 50, 60 people were getting killed in that. And that was just to do, because it's heavily populated with crazy Irish organized crime criminals. Just like the mass prison system is loaded with Italians and Irish organized crime criminals. We have, the whites, they have just as much numbers as, the blacks and the Spanish, in mass, as far as criminal, organized crime type criminals. So Whitey had a reputation. He became, he was a vicious killer. And I don't care what anybody says. I was in prison with the most vicious Irish guys that they were, coming out of South Boston, coming out of Charlestown. Charlestown was the bank robbery, armored car capital of the country, right? They've done movies on him and everything. My friend, actually, Brian Goldman, did a movie on his own life. He was a vicious hood. Excuse me. He was a vicious hood coming out of South Boston. He turned his life around. He's in L.A. doing movies now. He was supposed to be involved in one of the armored car robberies where they killed 2 of the guards. He didn't go on it, and he's out with his family. And he's a big-time director out here now in Los Angeles. Whitey, so coming from these guys while you're in prison, and these guys are multi-murderers, vicious hoodlums, and they all feared, not that they were afraid of Whitey and this and that, they all just had fear for that guy. That's how dangerous of a man Whitey Bulger was. He had his psychopath right next to him, Stephen Flemmi, and they murdered everybody. They didn't care if they had to kill you in the streets, and he went with himself. He went with guns himself. I was in Boston a lot where I never met him, but when I was doing a lot of business with the Irish in South Boston and the Charlestown area. He would be in bars and restaurants that I would go to, say, that's Whitey over there. Some of my associates would go over there and do business with him, talk with him, but I never went over there. He knew about me. He knew that he actually asked about me, that I was with I was kind of I answered to myself back then. I was big in the marijuana business. And he asked about me, who's he with, with that. And they said he's by himself. He's just with the weed. So I don't have that many, but I know the people the respect and fear that he had. He was I don't care what they say about him. Yes, he did kill a woman. Yes, he was a sicko, a dangerous guy. They put the thing on him that he was in the informant. But I believe that the most of that is he corrupted the FBI.
Well, yeah. Although he always denied it, the FBI stated that starting in 1975, he became an informant. And what he would do was give him information about his rivals, the Patriarca family.
I disagree with that. You said 95 or 75?
75.
75, yeah. I disagree with that analogy because he didn't have to give up information on the Italians. What could he give up on them, number one? Okay? They never got indicted for any murders. He wasn't participant in any of that. As far as their everyday rackets, what is he going to tell them? Yeah, they're bookmakers. Everybody knows the FBI, the Italian Mafia. They're in sports loan sharking, sports gambling numbers, extortions, with certain businesses, the vending business, big in the vending. So what could he tell them that the FBI didn't know? That's number one, right? And, where they're meeting. The Italians had their own informants at the time. He never told them where the most infamous mob induction ceremony ever to take place in Medford, Mass, when the Patriarchas inducted 4 new members to the family. He didn't tell them about that. So and that was in 1989. So if he was such a big informant informing on the Italians, and I'm not sticking up for this guy, I'm saying he was what he was. But I think, and I'll get into this, the Italians had their own informants, Sonny Mercurio. They had other guys that were informing on and Stephen Flemmi was an actual informant before Whitey was, an informant. When the guy Connolly came to Whitey, this guy was an idol in South Boston. Whitey was his idol. He comes to him, and 2 ways. I can protect you, right, because I'm an FBI agent. I can protect you, and I can help you out against your enemies. Now, who do you think got more? Whitey gets told where there's listening devices in his car. The guy comes, hey, you got a listening device in your car. And he wasn't the only FBI. There was multiple FBI agents and multiple state organized crime troopers telling him this. So who's playing who here? You're telling me where I got a bug and they're listening to me. Oh, thank you. We don't talk here no more. You saved me there, right? Then you tell me that there's this guy, Brian Hollerhan. He's an FBI. He's telling us information all about your crew and murders and this and that. Thank you. Me and this guy, we go shoot him and kill him. So I think they told him about 3 or 4 that I know about informants. The guy, Roger Wheeler, with the highlight guy. They told him about him. They told him this other highlight guy that he was sending Johnny Materano, who was a notorious hitman for the Patriarchas. I think he pled guilty, was like a Sammy the Bull, but this guy was killing them himself. He was a hitman. He was going to Florida and shooting business guys in the head on golf courses, and you can look all that up. You'll see it. So he's getting information on who the informants are. So who do you think is winning here? FBI telling you how to protect your organization because this guy's an informant. They got listening devices in your headquarters. There's listening devices in your car. Who do you think is winning with the information there? He's playing them. He's getting the information. And the only thing I can say is with the people that say that he's informant in, what I think happened. So now they have to have reason why they're protecting him. And the reason has to be he's an FBI informant. That's the only way they can protect him because he's Whitey Bulger. So he's got to get a number and he's got to get established as an informant. Now what happens is the Italian gangster is given the information, but they're giving credit to Whitey for it because they have to keep him in existence. They go for a yearly update. Why do you got this guy? He's a gangster as an informant. Well, because he's giving us information on the Italian Mafia. No, he's not. The Italian Mafia is giving it to them on their own, and they're giving him credit for it. So they're keeping him existed from the 70s all the way up until the 90s when they finally starting to get hip about this guy. New guys are coming in. They're saying, wait a second. You FBI agents are dirty. And they all were dirty. There was other agents. The guy got 40 years in prison. The other guy cooperated against him. I think he got time, Morris. There was other guys ahead of him that died before they could get prosecuted, right? So who do you think is like corrupting who? And so the only thing I would say is they saved him, yes, and people got indicted in his area for drugs, and people got indicted for, there was a horse race fixing thing, but they were going to get indicted no matter what, and they just kept him out of the indictment. They said, hey, he's an informant, and they saved him. So that's my take on all of that with him. But he was a dangerous killer. Nobody could take that away. He'll kill you with a knife. He'll kill you with a, he knows how to do that grappling and rip your eyes out. And he was a dangerous man.
Well, yeah, because in 1994, his handler, John Connolly, the FBI guy, tipped him off that a RICO case was coming.
They got tipped off, yep.
He got tipped off, so he became a fugitive.
Yep.
And then I think in 97, the media got involved and basically started unearthing all this information that made the FBI look really bad.
One of his guys flipped, Kevin Weeks.
Yeah.
So when he got indicted, he flipped and showed him where the bodies were.
Right. By 1999, Whitey Bulger was on the top 10 most wanted fugitive list.
Yes.
He was right behind Osama bin Laden.
Right. And they couldn't find Osama, but CNN did a interview with him in 97. But go ahead.
Right. So basically, Whitey Bulger was on the run for 16 years.
Yeah. And when they caught him, they found $800,000 cash on him 16 years later.
Yeah.
And guns and everything else with that.
Right. In 2011, they found him in Santa Monica, California, not too far from here, along with his girlfriend, Catherine Gregg.
Mm-hmm.
He was 81 years old by this time. So he gets arrested. He gets extradited back to Boston. His girlfriend pleads guilty to harboring a fugitive, identity fraud, conspiracy, and, to commit identity fraud and so forth. She gets 8 years in prison. So Whitey Bulger gets tried for 19 murders. And you're right. Kevin Weeks was one of the ones who actually cooperated against him.
Yeah, he was
the
main one. And they had Stephen Flemmy, he was already cooperating. Because they caught him. When they went on the lam, they caught Flemmy right away.
Yeah. He was also tried on 32 counts of racketeering, money laundering, extortion, weapons charges, and as well as the 19 murders. He was found guilty on 31 counts. And he was involved in 11 murders based on the case. He gets 2 life sentences, consecutive, plus 5 years.
Okay.
At 81 years old.
Oh, yeah. But he, of course, yeah.
Right. So he gets transferred around. In 2018, he gets transferred to the Federal Transfer Center in Oklahoma, and then to the penitentiary in Hazleton, then West Virginia. And when he gets to Hazleton, within 2 hours, and he's in a wheelchair at the time, he gets beaten to death by a group of guys. Fotios Freddy Geas, Paul DiCalagero, and Sean McKinnon.
Right.
They used a sock wrapped with a padlock, as well as a knife. His eyes were gouged out. His tongue was cut out. Law enforcement said that he was unrecognizable. Now, you actually know one of the guys that was involved in this.
Yeah, he was in my crew, Freddie.
Freddie. Who exactly is Freddie?
So Freddie, and a lot of people don't know that. So I was in prison with his brother Ty at a young age, 1990. We were both first time ever in prison, in state prison. I was 21, he was like 18. We were running wild in prison, getting in all kinds of trouble. We go from one to the other. And while we're in this other prison, his brother Freddie, who you're talking about, Freddie, we're there, comes and visits us. And that's how I meet Freddie. Ironically, and funny as it is, Freddie was a prison guard for the local county prison in Springfield.
A prison guard.
Yeah, he was a prison guard.
Okay.
And then he was from prison guard. That's all the stories. Like he went in and he did it because he hates rats and all this stuff and everything. He was a prison guard. You ask any straight up convict who they hate, and they'll tell you cops, prosecutors, FBI, any type of law enforcement, and prison guards. They hate him. So he was a prison guard. So all the media built up stories on that is exactly what that is. But he worked at his family's jewelry store. They were a crazy family. I got along great with them because I'm crazy. We're all nuts in our own ways. And we instantly took a liking. Me and Ty had plans when we were coming out of prison to do big things on the streets because we were just starting off my career as you could say, an organized criminal way. Being in state prison was the best thing that ever happened to me. I learned so much from older criminals, especially about organized crime activity, about making money on the streets. That's why when I got out, I got big into the marijuana business. And so Ty was supposed to join me. He was beating up jail guards while he beat up this Spanish guy in our unit. It was the last straw for him. We were told that we got warned, next trouble, we're shipping you out. He went to Walpole, Mass. Walpole is one of the dangerous prisons in the America. He goes over there, young kid, impressionable, card spits on the floor. One of the older inmates that are there doing a life that actually Whitey Bulger framed this kid. He overturned his case, Freddie Weichel. He overturned it while Whitey framed him for the murder. And now because of that, he did like 30, 40 years in prison. He overturned it. Ty ends up beating up the Freddie's brother, Freddy Geas, his brother Tai Geas, beats up the prison guard so bad that the guy had to permanently retire. he broke his face apart. They beat up Tai in retaliation for that viciously. He was supposed to come home in 1991 in March. I came home in 1991 in February. He ends up having to do 5 more years. When I got out in March, that's when me and Freddie become good friends. Freddie wasn't a organized crime criminal. He was, like I said, a prison guard. He was working for his family's jewelry store. He was married. He had a kid, another one on the way. And he was a scammer type criminal. He worked at his family's jewelry store. He would scam credit cards, get the numbers, go out and buy jewelry with it. We robbed and hijacked trucks. He was a score guy. We hijacked tractor trailer trucks. We robbed drug dealers. He was that type of a criminal, but he was like a score type guy. He wasn't like me. I was a hustler. I had it coming in. I had rackets that were bringing me money every day and every week. He was just like rob a drug dealer, hijack a truck, those type of scores. And that's just exactly what he was. He was a good friend to have around if violence had to be, but he wasn't my only, he wasn't one of the most violent that I had around me back then. This was like in the early 90s to mid 90s. And he wasn't organized crime criminal. I had my own organized crime criminal guys around me at that time, and I had a big crew throughout Connecticut. What Freddie changed was, and he became a different man, I would say, is because state prison will change you, especially Massachusetts. It's a very violent prison system. Anybody that goes there, he ended up getting 4 years with they robbed some computers or whatever, and he had to go do 4 years. He went in around 96, 97. He got out in 01. Now he was like, you could tell he was a little changed. He was around seasoned gangsters that had murders under their belt. He liked the fact that they had murders and they participated in murders, and you could tell he wanted to be a part of that and participate in murders. So when he got out in 01, that's when he and his brother got out around the same time for his second bid, and that's when Freddie became more of around me more, but more in organized crime circles ways. So in 01, he started coming around me more, getting involved in more of my rackets. Like I got him involved in the marijuana business. He was never involved in any of my sports, loan sharking, numbers, vendings, until I took over in 03, and then I got him involved in some vendings and things like that. And they made a lot of money with me. They were probably making $60,000, $70,000 a month just with me, never mind all the other stuff that they had going on. So that's his story, basically, quickly as I can say it, when he came home from prison in 01, that's when he was more, he liked that type of life, you could tell. And they were, like I said, crazy family, tough family, good family, and we were all crazy and tough and good, together. We were a bad combination, you could say, when it came to that, with us, when it came to doing things.
So was he a hitman?
No, he wasn't a hitman. He didn't kill anybody without me being right next to his side. I mean, was he a killer? Yeah. Am I a killer? Yeah.
How many people did he kill?
Same amount that I did.
Two,
same amount of shootings as I did.
Okay.
He never went out. They describe him as my muscle. How are they my muscle when every shooting that we did, he was the driver on one of the shootings. Me and his brother were the shooters in New York City.
Okay.
So it's like, how are you my muscle when every murder that I'm doing with you, I'm participating in with you. And I'm actually the shooter, the violence. I'm there with the beatings that we're giving guys. I'm actually there in the beatings, the other guys that were shooting and stabbing and clubbing, I'm actually there doing it with you. So they were just friends that were like me. And at a particular time, if I needed them to go on a hit with me, I would choose them. I had a big crew if I needed someone else to go and give someone a beating, but I would always go with the people I always sent.
Okay, so what was he in prison for during the Whitey Bulger situation?
So he ended up, the Bruno murder happened in 03. The shooter in the Bruno murder cooperated in 06 on the eve of 07. He was supposed to start trial on a state murder case. The day before, 2 days before, he makes a deal with the government. So I'm going back. You asked why he was in there when Bulger got killed. He was doing a life sentence for murders.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why do you think he killed Whitey Bulger?
Again, when he came out of prison in 2001, he was different. He liked being around guys that committed murders. He liked the camaraderie of being around crazy lunatics that were, because they were all funny, ball busters. You have a good time busting balls and all that, but they're killers. He liked being around that. He liked being one. He wanted to be one of them. And you could tell, like, when he came out, when we murdered, I was the type that it changed my life, because not that I had remorse or anything like that. It changed my life now because when the feds come and arrest you, I'm not going to jail for 2 years. I'm going to jail if it's for the murder for the rest of my life. And you sleep differently after that. So when it came to being about the murder, I would never want to be associated with it. I try to be like, I never had nothing to do with that. He took off to Florida with another girl. He left my wife's sister, who killed Bruno. I don't know. The guy had a beef with him, and the guy came with a gun. They had a beef over it. I deflect. I don't want to be known as the guy, because I don't want law enforcement coming at me with that 24/7, which they did and which they do. Surveillance. Like once you get that known as a killer and you're a boss and they're a made guy, like Gotti Sr. Once Castellano got killed, you seen how bad they wanted him. They let Sammy the Bull go for 20 murders and give him 5 years. They wanted him bad, right? Same thing with like, say, the Gotti name. They went after his son because of the name, right? Once they come at you and they want you, the guy in Philadelphia, the boss there, they went after him because they knew he had murders. He beat the murders. They're never going to stop one. And that's how I was in my area, Connecticut and Mass. I was that guy. So I had Manhattan U.S. Attorney. I had Connecticut U.S. Attorney, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, all joint investigations trying to build cases on me because I was that guy. 24/7 surveillance, bugs in your cars, bugs in the restaurants, bugs on every phones. So it's 24/7 nonstop scrutiny. So I didn't want that scrutiny. Freddie did. Freddie didn't. I'll give you an example. We murder my brother-in-law. The next day, they already know we're the suspects. The sister's calling my wife saying her husband didn't come home. So we're already the suspects. And they're the suspects because she's telling them that the last two people that he was with are the two brothers, Freddy and Tai Geas. And that was the last people that he was going to be with. So they're the main subjects, but everybody knows they're with me and I'm the guy, the mafia guy, and they're Greek. So they know that I'm involved somehow. And the next day they pull up an Italian section in Springfield, where it's a hotspot. FBI's always watching it. Organized crime troopers are watching it. They know this guy just went missing. They know we're the suspects. And here he comes in a convertible Corvette, parks right in front. Prime suspect of a disappearance. I see him. I go out the back door. He calls me up. He's laughing. He goes, "Buddy, where you going?" Right? He goes, I go, "I'm getting away from you." You don't want to do that. That's, it's bringing heat. Same thing as when we killed, where we buried him. That was my house. I used to keep $1 million worth of marijuana there. I had guns, AK-47s, grenades, all kinds of, that was my house. I kept it like a stash house. It was an old man, Joe, used to live there. As soon as I buried the body there, I never went back. Because they got this GPS now. They're looking for this guy, and they're going to follow you. They follow my car. He's always going to this house. Or maybe that's a good house that there could be a body at. And they did have a GPS in my car. So I never went back to that house. So Freddie liked the fact, we drove by where the body was. Me, him, and his brother. I'm driving. And he starts singing this song, "On top of Old Smoky, all covered with blood." And me and his brother, his brother's a psychopath too. We're all psychopaths. It's just I'm more, when it comes to making money on the streets, I'm just more intelligent when it comes to that. But we're all crazy and nuts and capable of doing, which we did. We proved that we did do that. So me and his brother look at each other. I turn the radio up and we look at him like, "What are you doing, you stupid fuck?" Like, we just driving by where the body is. They're dredging rivers looking for this guy. I got helicopters flying over my house. I mean, I'm talking so low like you were in a war zone. Like you could hear the I look up, it was a helicopter because they were probably looking for the sensors of a body, you know? Then they thought he was buried in my wife's father's sausage. He ground up sausage because my wife's father hated him. They hated him, so they probably figured, you know, we brought him there and ground him up in the sausage thing, you know? Because they were actually going there looking for him there, you know? So Freddie liked it.
Have you ever heard of this? Someone actually grinding up someone into
I believe that would happen. I mean, I haven't heard exact, but why not? I mean, you know, you chop the arm off, you throw it in the thing, it's going to grind it up.
Right, then you sell it to somebody and they eat it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
it.
Okay.
I heard certain foods got humans in them.
Okay.
I don't know. But anyways, but Freddie liked that. He liked, Bruno gets killed. The suspect is a guy 6'1" with a hoodie. Tai is 6'1". The next day, it's in the paper. Bruno gets killed. Suspect 6'1". Tai's 6'1". Guy's got a hoodie. They know Tai has a history with Bruno because Bruno slapped him around. Okay, so Tai, the next day, what do you think he's wearing? He's wearing a hoodie, and he's 6'1". They wanted to be known, not so much as Tai, but still, you're wearing a hoodie, the description. I had friends coming up to me going, is this kid fucking... They thought he did it. So they're coming up to me going, is he fucking nuts? He's got a hoodie on right now. Like, I'm going, but he didn't kill him, you know? You know, in my head, I'm going, he didn't kill him. I'm saying, you know, I don't know who killed him.
Yeah.
But Freddie liked it. Freddie liked the, you know, he wanted to be known, he wanted to kill 20 more people. And it would have been done for no reasons. I stopped him from killing. There's people out there that should be, instead of hating on me, should be loving me because I stopped him from killing normal kids' sons for no apparent, no reason to kill over a disrespect with their girl, that he disrespected his girl. He wanted to kill them. That's not happening. And, you know, just over, you know, New York wanted to use him to go kill people. Again, out there, I stopped him from doing that. I said, don't get involved with any of them. You work with me, I'll handle that. So, but he wanted to be that guy. He wanted to be like, you know, what's the difference of 1 or 12? You're going to get life. And he wanted to, you know, he liked the fact that he was known as a killer. So Whitey Bulger comes in. High profile guy. He's 90 years old in a wheelchair. Yeah. I mean, you could have slapped him 20 times and killed him.
Right.
So, I mean, it's like, you know, why else would you kill him? He could have very easily told. He didn't even do nothing to him where it was a revenge type thing.
So there's no connection between Freddie and
They
Whitey
said
Bulger.
something about because he put that other guy in prison for a crime he didn't commit, you know, so he might hate him for that. You know, like, oh, well, you put my friend in prison. You said that he committed this crime. Actually, you murdered him and you blamed it on him. Well, you didn't blame him, but he kind of like it was a frame job with the cops. I don't know how exactly it went. So Freddie was in prison with the guy, but that's just a story. You know, did he kill him, a 90-year-old guy, because he put some guy in jail for 40 years and you know, there was no personal interest. Other than the fact that he's Whitey Bulger. Whitey Bulger's name is as big as Al Capone's, as big as John Gotti Sr. His Whitey Bulger is that infamous. He was back in the day in Alcatraz. They did LSD experimentations on him back when they were doing that.
Wow.
He was a real badass, notorious gangster. And then when all this stuff came out, you know, as being an informant and he went on the lam, you know, but he ruled that area with an iron fist. His guys, not the Italians, but his guys. And the Italians were, you know, leery of him too. Like, you know, even though he reported, he didn't report, but he wouldn't fuck with the Italians. They were just too big. So Freddie, the guy goes in there and they beat him to death. And he gets the notoriety now. We're talking about him.
Yeah. He's already doing life in prison.
He's already doing life in prison.
Cares?
But here's the bad part. The guy that was doing, that they said did the murder with him, Paul DiCalagero, I talked with one of his family members. The kid was going to be home this year.
Oh.
The kid had a 27-year sentence. He was coming home in 2025, I think. He gets involved in this murder. What happens if this kid gets a life sentence? Because they pled guilty just recently. And you threw your life away to kill a 90-year-old scumbag?
Yeah, who's probably about a year or two from dying anyways.
He was probably going to die a worse possible death than the beating. You probably made it quick. He probably died within 10 seconds of them hitting him. And he probably would have got cancer and suffered for fucking months before he died.
Well, you said at the height of the violence, your crew had a list of a dozen people that you guys wanted to kill.
Yeah, well, I pled guilty to, like I said, at least 4, it could be more, that I pled guilty to conspiracy to murder that we didn't kill. We plotted to kill them. There was this one family in my area, I tried like a dozen times to kill them. That was a beef that I had with that family, and I tried so hard to kill him. Everything that was going on in 2003 when Bruno got killed. See, people like, when you say I participated in Bruno's murder, Bruno was with me. Me and Bruno were close. I didn't want to have anything to do with Bruno's murder. I got ordered eventually to kill him, and I had to kill him, participate in his murder. But that was the furthest thing I wanted. These dummies back in Springfield, like, they think like, you know, I took out Bruno to become the big boss, and I was already the most powerful guy in the area. And I'm telling you, Vlad, and this is a fact, I was looking to kill the Manzi family in my area. My house, there was a beef that went on. We shot 3 guys. We stabbed them with ice picks. We clubbed them. 2 days later, I'm at my nightclub, and my house gets shot 25 times. Low, I had a brick house. It got shot low. I knew who was behind the order. It was the old man in Italy, but I knew his family was here. And from that day on, my goal was to murder that. There was nothing else I was concentrating on. Even my money's on the street. My whole goal was to kill that family. And that was it. I don't care what anybody says in the newspapers. I don't care what anybody says I wanted to kill Bruno for this. That was the people I pled guilty to killing them. I wanted to kill them, and they're lucky they're alive. Okay, so so Bruno, when he was boss, he had a list of about a half a dozen guys that he had us on stock, getting their movements down and laying on them and gonna clip them. I pled guilty to them. There was like 3 or 4 with him. Never mind our guys with Freddy. I think there was an article. There was a hit list with us, and this is how sloppy Freddy was. Like I would never talk about a murder. Once that murder happened, I'm not even going to talk about it with the guys I did it with. And so, but he would like to tell people like the fact that we're all murderers, and like let other people know that didn't participate in the murder. Give them subtle clues of things. And so, yeah, there was a list.
Okay. Who was the most violent person that you actually knew?
It wasn't the 2 brothers, and I don't even want to say the guy's name, but he was out of Connecticut, and he was the most violent, vicious killer that was involved in me. Older guy, and way more murders than any, way more dangerous with his hands, a killer, and I had lots of guys that were like guys out of Boston, guys that in New York. When I was doing all my stuff from the 90s up until I got made in 03, the people that came across, that came in, and I don't call it my crew. Me and you are friends, and I'm selling you 100 pounds of marijuana a week. You're not my crew. We're associates, and I'm just in the weed business with you. I might be in the sports business with him. I might be selling cocaine with him. I might be, this guy might be a violent, vicious dude that we went and clubbed the guys, broke his legs. We went and shot a guy with this guy. So all together, they try to label it as my crew, which technically I was the made guy, so that's why they do that. But we were all just, I would say business associates that were all worked together throughout the Northeast, like Boston, New York, Connecticut, into Albany, New York, Massachusetts. And it was just a good network. So Tai, and I'll tell you this, Tai Geas is a lot more dangerous than Freddy Geas. Freddy wanted the, and I don't like talking about the murders, because the families that were involved in this and that. But on one murder, I had to yell at him to shoot the guy in the head because I don't want to see the guy get buried alive, because he was beaten and he was shot, but I wanted to make sure because he was going in a hole. And that sounds sick, but still, you don't want to see a guy buried alive. So I'm saying shoot him in the head. And he's got the gun over his head. I go, shoot him. because they already shot him 7 times and the guy didn't die. He had to get, I'm shooting him. So he's hesitating. And then I walked over to go get the gun, and then finally he shot him. So he hesitated when it came to putting that bullet in the guy's head. Another time when we shot 3 guys, I was saying, shoot, 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 shoot. Finally, I said, give me the gun. And that's when he went, pop, 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 and shot him. Whereas Tai has a little bit of that paranoid schizophrenic in him. He's more of a dangerous of the two. And he's so petrified. And as dangerous as he is, he's tough with his hands, bigger than me. Like, I would use a gun on him if I had to. But he was petrified of me, not in a way where he's scared of me because of who I am, because he knows that I have the capability of having him killed. We went to a social club in New York, and I know how he was. He wanted to sit in the front seat. I was going with made guys to go meet other business guys, and there's 2 made guys coming with us. And Tai. Tai's Greek. He's just a crazy young. Get in the front. No, Tai, you get in the front. I'm the driver. Get in the front. No, you, Tai. They're fighting on who's going to get in the front. Because this guy's an old gangster, but Tai doesn't want to get in the front because this guy, he's thinking this guy's going to shoot him. We go to a club in New York, social club. It happened to be closed. The guy's opening. I already know what he's thinking. Closed social club in New York. We're going to clip him. We get back in the car. I go, tell me what you were thinking when we were walking in that club. He goes, I'll be honest, I was like 3 seconds from just taking off running because he thought we were going to clip him in there. And I'm trying to make it easy. I'm going in first, turning the lights, walking all around way ahead of him. So Ty's more of a dangerous, Freddy's the type also that would have someone else do the job rather than him do it hands-on. Ty's more of a hands-on guy.
Did you know about Richard Kuklinski, a.k.a. the Iceman?
I know about his story. I think he lied about, but he's a dangerous guy. I know he's definitely a killer. I mean, I think he lied about a lot of that stuff, but you could tell looking at him, he's a killer. Like, I don't think there's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Well, you became a made man yourself, but you actually talked about in the 60s and 70s, people would actually pay to become made men?
I've heard there was a time in New York, I think it was the Gambino family, when I forgot I don't know if it was Anastasia, but there was a time period in them where they were paying $50,000 to get made, and they didn't recognize those guys afterwards. And I don't know about that. That's just something that it was, I don't know how I heard it, something like that. There was a guy in my area. He ends up being an informant from the 80s to it came out in like 2016 that he was an informant. Jimmy Santaniello. He owned the Mardi Gras strip club. Well, he was a Whitey Bulger. You talk about Whitey Bulger. No, this guy really was. There was 302s and notes of him informing on the mafia. So this guy is an informant since the 80s. Jimmy Santaniello. He owns the strip club, biggest strip club, and he was trying to pay $50,000 to get made back in like the 80s and everything. And they in our area was so strict with old school wise guys that was never going to happen. Because, that would never happen. In our area, they wanted you to participate in a murder. Mm-hmm. We had an old school bunch of wise guys, and if you put in work and you kill 2-3 people and that's how you had to get made, you don't want some guy coming in that just say, oh, you're cousins with so-and-so, or you're a great money earner, and here, we're going to give you your button, and you're going to get the same respect as I do, have the same say in certain matters. It maybe even get promoted to a captain over me, and I kill 3 people just because you make more money. So that's how you look at it like that. But yeah, there are guys that are money makers that get made because of that.
Well, Michael Francis.
Yeah, well, yeah. His father was who he was, very intelligent guy, big time money maker, and and not to say nothing that he didn't have to participate in murders, but when you got a notorious mobster father, he's gonna watch out for that and stop you from being involved in where you had to participate in for a murder. Right. And also the fact that he had $8 million a week coming in. I mean, it was big money, and that's a big asset for the family. Everybody thinks like the mafia, you need to be an organization, you have to be powerful, like a form of a government powerful. You got to wheel and deal with politicians, judges, law enforcement. Everybody calls them a rats, right? But how are you going to become a powerful organization if you're not a powerful organization? So what else you need? You need money. So there's all types of ways to make money. His way was the gas scam. Right. It was bringing in huge money. So
And you actually interacted with Sonny Franzese, who's Michael's father.
Not directly, but yeah.
Indirectly?
Yeah, through a situation that was happening in New York City. The Hustler nightclub was owned by a few guys from Connecticut, and they own restaurants and bars in Connecticut. And but they were opening up the Hustler nightclub. This was back in like 02, 03-ish, 04. And so what happened was the Genovese family, us, we sent in a dozen guys from the family to go into the Hustler nightclub, you know, walk in there, don't pay for the tab, drink, stay in there for a few hours, leave, and then tell the manager, tell the guys, these owners, that we're their new partners. So that was the way we hit them there. And then in our area, we were going to do a lot worse, but we threatened them and said that you have to pay $12,000 a week out of the Hustler nightclub. The next day I got served with a, I don't know why they do this, but Connecticut and Mass, they give you a target letter. So 1 or 2 days later, I got hit with a target letter that I'm a target of a federal investigation. And it was over the meeting I had with these owners of the club. So we back off going in that direction. And but the whole goal was in New York was for them to push out who was behind these guys. Because there's always a wise guy, somebody behind them. You know, in the trash business, you know, we did the same thing in the trash business. We're pushing with the trash, and come to find out, Matty the horse is behind them. Well, in this case, it was Sonny Franzese that was behind them in the Hustler nightclub. It was the Colombos. And so that's how the interaction was. And then they dealt with it in New York. The beef moved to, instead of us being involved, the bosses in New York got involved, you know, and did what they had to do. Well, and I pled guilty to that on my 2010 racketeering case. That was one of my extortions.
Got it. Well, I did Joey Merlino's first interviews. His first sit down. You saw it. And Joey, and I actually had to ask him if I could introduce him in this way. He's the rumored boss of the Philly Mafia. Don't know if it's true or not.
Right.
But this was a very different interview.
Okay.
Every question was, I don't know.
Yeah.
I wasn't there.
It has to be.
Yeah, it was very interesting.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because most guys that interview are way out of the life, many years and so forth.
Or they had deals where they can talk about things.
Yeah, he had none of that.
Right.
He had none of that. Did you know about Joey Merlino?
Well, so it's our family, the Genovese family, and that family, the Bruno Scarfo family, which was who it was before, back in the day. We had interactions with them. My older gangsters, Skyball, the ones you mentioned, Bruno, we used to do junkets and big racket trips that would go to Atlantic City. Because gambling back then was to the casinos, and there wasn't many casinos back then. It was Vegas and Atlantic City.
Yeah.
It wasn't all these Indian casinos. And so a big thing was get 25, 50 guys, have a junket down to the casinos, and we used to interact with the Bruno Scarfo family. Scarfo loved Bruno. Nicky Scarfo, the nut from Philly, he loved Adolfo Bruno in our area. He used to go be on the boat with them. Bruno ended up shooting a guy 5 times. The guy didn't die at his farm in his yard. Skyball, he was worried Skyball Shabelli was going to clip him over that. He reached out to Nicky Scarfo to see if he could intervene. He was worried Scarfo and Filianetti, the underboss, testified against Bruno's murder trial. That about everything that I'm telling you right now, that Bruno reached out to Scarborough. So there was a lot of interactions. Bruno was friendly with the Merlino. I don't know if he actually knew Joey Merlino, but he knew the uncle that cooperated. I don't know if that was Chucky or Yogi. Yogi was one. And there was the other Merlino, his father, the one that was, I guess he was a underboss, and he liked to drink, and they demoted him. The story I got from those guys is they were going to clip him, but who knows if any of that's true and this and that. As far as Joey, the only interactions I got with Joey was through Bobby Louisi, was a Patriarcha guy in Boston. He was at odds with the Patriarchas. He goes to Philadelphia and gets straightened out under Joey Merlino. Joey Merlino straightens him out. So now I'm friendly.
Allegedly.
No, it's a fact. He pled guilty to it, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, I mean, you want to say allegedly. I mean, you know, like you said, rumors. Was he the boss? I mean, you could actually say allegedly about that because, you know, he was in prison. The other guy was there. He come out of prison. He went to Florida. I don't think he's the boss. So, you know, that could be true, allegedly with that.
Well, yeah. I mean, he got charged for RICO with the Genovese Mafia.
Yeah, but that was a Mickey Mouse charge he got. Our guys got charged with the extortions and everything. I think he got charged with some bullshit by the same informant too, by the guy Rooster brought around. And it was some stupid charge, I think, with medicine or something. You know, he was gonna beat the case, but yeah, it was the same informants, the 47 guys that got involved. Those were my old crew. Out of the 47, the guys you mentioned, Ralphie and all them, those were 5 of them in my immediate area, and then Patsy and all them from the Genovese family in New York City. There was another like 3 or 4 that was with us. And then you had the guy like Joey and the guy Rooster. You know, he had an FBI agent driving him around, this dummy. You know, so yeah, so that was a Mickey Mouse case with him. And like I said, once you're labeled, so like a John Gotti Sr., Joey Merlino in Philadelphia, beats the murders. I think he still got 14 years, but he's got that name, right? They're never letting that go. So the best move he ever did was to move to Florida, number one. Second best move, that's what I was trying to do when I got out in 08. Because when they're on you, I'm telling you, when they're on you like that, I was a Merlino or a Gotti in my area with the law enforcement presence, okay? Once you're known as like the boss and murders are involved, and especially mine was a notorious, like a Castellano murder. We murdered our boss on the streets at a social club. So it was like the most notorious murder in the Northeast besides like a Castellano type thing. So the smartest thing he did was go to Florida, which I wanted to get away from all that shit, getting more involved in legitimate business. And then the other best thing he's done is he couldn't make money on the streets, and he's then doing this type of shit. And he's going to make plenty of money doing that. And he was not making nowhere near money. He's not a money guy. He even tells you in his interviews, he's like I was telling you, like a Freddy, a shot taker, overboard a bookmaker, he robbed an armored car. He's a score guy. He'll even tell you he never had a sports book. You know, like...
Well, he's a gambler himself.
He's a gambler. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I think he actually described himself as
I'm a degenerate gambler too.
Gambler,
Everything that you could say, I'm probably a sick, worse gambler than he is. The stories the amounts of money that I blew in my life gambling.
How much money did you blow gambling?
Oh, 1 week in Vegas, $450,000. 1 week. If I had to pay all my debts, it'd be about $10 million. But in the same...
You lost $10 million.
If I had to pay.
Were you just a bad gambler?
Horrible. I could tell you, listen, I'll tell you real quick, like I could never win. So like Joey Merlino, he would overboard bookmakers. That's what we do. You know, we're gangsters. We look, you know, not our friends, but a guy that's bookmaking, we'll go into him and take a shot at him and try to win $100,000. And then the next week you blow the 100 back and we're saying we're not paying you. But that's not a bad thing. Everyone would say, oh, that's a scumbag move. No, it's not, because we go to prison for what we are, organized crime. You guys are doing it without any scrutiny from law enforcement. We pay the price. The penalty is the investigations that law enforcement comes with us. So what gives you the right? So that's why we come after those guys. So when it comes to gambling, you're hoping to get into the guy and make money. That's one thing I could never do. Every guy I got into, $150,000. $180,000, $60,000, $40,000, and then the ones I had to pay, I paid. Like I used to bet $5,000 a game, 100 games a day.
Wow!
On a Saturday, that's like $550,000 with the juice worth of action, and people think that's crazy. I used to bet the board with the overs, and like when you're betting those games, you're like, I'm going to take Boston College. I'm saying college football, you know, Boston College in the over, Pittsburgh in the over. If you put down 30 and there's only 10 games left, you might as well say, well, give me the other 10. You know, what's the difference of 30 or 40 and plus the overs? There's 80 bets right there. And I could never win. I had a guy one time come in from back when the internet was started. He was Beverly Hills bookie when we went overseas ourselves. We had the offices, Costa Rica. And he comes in with a Lamborghini. This was back in like early 2000. One of the first guys, Lamborghini, you know, comes into the strip club. He's like promoting his business. And I said, right away, I give him the line. I got like 8, 10 guys. I got one guy that wants to bet $10,000 a game cash. He goes, you want them? He goes, yeah, I'll take them. Now this kid's partying all night. Next day I go, I grab like, 80, 50,000, 100,000. I don't remember what I get, but I get money, put it in my waist. I go to pick up the kid. But in the meantime, he's sleeping. I had till halftime to bet the games. Now, I don't know if you know about football, but, the game's at half. There's lines on the game. Dallas is 3-point favorite over Pittsburgh, right? Halftime comes, Dallas is up 24-0. Who are you going to bet? Dallas, right?
Yeah.
They're up by 24, right? I had till halftime to bet the games. I bet 10,000 a game. New Orleans was playing Cincinnati. The score was 17-14 first quarter. I had till halftime. None and over was like 43. I put 10,000 on the game. I go and pick the kid up because I'm calling him up. He's not answering. I'm saying, hey, dude, I got these bets here. What are you going to do? You want? He's not answering the phone. Finally, he answers. I said, hey, I got all the bets. He goes, yeah, just write them down and come pick me up. I go pick him up. I had till halftime. He gets in the car. Now I'm going to bring him to my cousin's restaurant, my restaurant. I own my cousin. I go, listen, I want you to peek your head out because my cousin's a thief. I couldn't ever leave him the money. He would have stole the money on me, So I had to go in the restaurant, say, peek your window out, let this guy see your face and wave. He does that. I get back in the car. I show the guy, look, he just gave me all the money. I think it was 100,000. And I says, you want to, I gave him the bullshit like I was going to let him hold it, but I got the money. He's not holding the money. Do you know at the end of the 1 o'clock sessions, I had till halftime to bet it. I was stuck 10,000, 11,000. I lost money and I had till halftime. And you get so mad when that happens. 4 o'clock, same thing. I had to after the first quarter to bet. I lost another 10,000. Now I'm stuck 20-something thousand. And then the night game was New England and I was switching the lines with this kid. I was like, yeah, the line was 3. I said it was 7. The under and over was 48. I said it was 41. So the night game comes and he says, I got New England for 15,000, the over for 15,000. He says, or 10,000, 10,000. I call him up the line 7, the line's 41. He calls me back, hey, that ain't the line. I said, all right, switch the bet. But I end up winning those. So I go through that whole, aggravation for the whole day. Meeting him, picking up him, Bruno, my cousins, showing him the money. At the end of the day, I break out even. And then the next week, I blow 140,000 to the kid. Now he's looking to get paid. And I said, listen, I don't know, I can't, there's trouble with the guy. We can't get the money. He goes to Bruno. Bruno comes up to me and he says, hey, now this kid was just coming in on his own. He goes, the kid, he's with me. You owe him the money. I said, Bruno, I'm not paying that kid a penny. I took a shot at him. But Bruno's coming in looking to, poke his nose in to grab a little pay. I didn't pay him nothing. And I got 100 stories like that. Never could win. So when it comes to gambling, it's just, the only time I ever won in gambling, I'm a bookmaker. I take the bets is when I would call the guy that answers the phone. Right? He's not a bookie. Guy that answers the phone, I would call him and say, who do we need to win? And he'd say, oh, well, we got 15,000 that they bet on Dallas. Dallas is playing New England. I said, all right. So I would take all the teams that we needed. Those aren't my picks. Those are just teams that we needed. Then I'd call another bookmaker, the one I had to pay, and I bet 2,000 a game with them. And that's the only time really I won in my life, is things like that. When I didn't have no say as the picks and everything.
Well, you still live in Springfield.
Yeah.
I mean, is there money on your head because you cooperated and you're still in the same region? For example, I talked to Michael Franzese and, he lives in LA somewhere. He's not going to go back to his old neighborhood and so forth. Not really. That's what he told me.
I don't think so. I would doubt that. I would think he would go anywhere. I mean, especially with the Colombo.
He still watches his back and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, you watch your back for anything. You drive crazy. You watch your back for another
it's
driver.
It's a little different, though.
I don't know. I think with
Has
him,
anyone ever approached you or anything?
No, and if there would never be a price, number one. The mob don't work like that. It's not like a street gang type thing. It was
right, because usually hits are done
you
as orders, not for money.
Right.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, they're not killing anybody no more, not because they're not capable. And I'm not saying they're not capable of killing me. I go, but would you want to be the guy to try to come kill me? Number one, you got to kill me. How do you know I'm not going to kill you? Number one, because I am a killer. But you got cameras everywhere.
Yeah, 2024
I don't care where you go.
I
don't care. You could think of any way. I was having a talk with a guy at the cigar place last night. And we're talking like, how would you kill somebody today? Like he's a movie producer. And he's trying to do it for his production thing. Like in a way to say, how would a guy get away with killing today? You can't. Like you could say, well, I'll go drive somewhere on a motorcycle with a mask on. You're white and dressed like a black man, or you're black and dressed like a white man, and walk in there with a wig. And and go in there on a motorcycle and walk into the place and blow the guy's brains out and then get back. You still got to get back on a motorcycle. That motorcycle's going somewhere, and it's going by cameras. They're going to businesses. You know, like that guy Hernandez when he killed the guy and
Aaron Hernandez. Yeah.
They followed him for, I don't know, 100 miles to find out where that car went.
Yeah, I mean, I asked this question to various people. I remember when I asked Sammy the Bull if he could kill someone in 2024 and get away with it.
I remember he said yes.
He said yes, because he feels that he'll stake out the situation. He's very patient. It'll take him a long time. I don't know, though.
Yeah, I mean, listen.
I don't know.
There's a chance, a lucky chance that, I even, you could even say you're going for a jog, and then you shoot, what are you going to, you knock on the guy's door, you shoot him, and then you run. So you're still going to run somewhere. You go in the woods. You got to come out somewhere. I mean, I don't know, like, it's so hard. And what does that also do? It brings in, that's what brings in the life sentences. So if you're a mob boss today, like these guys in the Genovese family that aren't even, they're like here, and the next level's probably here, and the people that can get to them are probably here. Nobody can get to them. That's why you get a dummy like Rooster and they put him up. Oh, you're the boss. You're the lightning rod. Go ahead, take the pinch for the feds. So it brings in all the heat, all the big time comes, when the murders come. If you're a boss, you're not going to give because if you give the order, now if you're the boss, it's got to go to the guy say you're the bosses, to the actual made guys, to the actual who's going to kill them if they're to kill them, and then you're going to go kill the guy. You just put yourself all up in a life potential sentence, and they don't. And then if you're going to go kill informants today, you'd have to kill. There ain't enough guns in the world to kill them all. There's informants everywhere.
Yeah.
All sorts of types of informants. Like, they move the goalposts. Well, this guy really isn't a rat because, he wasn't, he didn't get the oath. So he's not really a rat. Or, this guy really wasn't a violent guy and he's just an informant and he's a businessman. So he's okay. You know what I'm saying? So they all switch it around. But you were even heard on Merlino's interview when you asked him how many people he thinks today are informants in the mafia. And I think he said 98%.
Yeah.
Right. Well, there you go. And that's from an allegedly active mob boss. That's no longer in the mob, moved to Florida, and has nothing to do with the mob allegedly and all that bullshit. Right.
Yeah.
Doing podcasts or whatever.
Right. But you still have some drama because I don't know if you heard, he was opening up a cheesesteak shop in Philly, and then the shop was lit on fire.
Yeah, that's some stupid. That ain't. If they wanted drama, they would have blew the thing up, and there would be a message like, people said all kinds of things. The mob's mad at him because he's doing this podcast.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, come on. They're not killing guys that put people in prison, and they're going to blow up his cheesesteak place.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So yeah, I don't believe that was just a fluke, some dumb thing, and whatever.
Well, you have a book coming out.
I do.
South End Syndicate, How I Took Over the Genovese Springfield Crew.
Yes.
It's coming out on September 17th of this year.
Yep.
Tell me about it.
So that book, originally, we started that project in 2020 around COVID. And I wanted to explain to you, like I do with you on an interview, more about, and I'm sure you're an interview, you interview dozens of mobsters and everything. You don't hear much about Connecticut. And you don't hear much about, like, Springfield, Western Mass, right? And it's a notorious area. And there's notorious guys that came out of there, major league gangsters. And I wanted to tell the story of all of that. So that's my goal of, getting involved with this guy. He's written, Joe Bradley, he's written 5 or 6 books already, but they were all fiction. This is the first nonfiction book he's writing. He's doing another project right now with the same company about Charlestown, the bank robbers and everything. I had the book. I haven't read it. I just don't like I won't watch this interview. I don't read my own book. I just don't like doing that shit. But yeah, the book is coming out. There was just a great review on it by a #1 best-selling author, Dave Wedge, I mean. And I think I'm getting his name right, but he gave a brilliant review of it. And I gave it to a couple people to read, and they said it came out great. So I don't know. It's, I was me telling him the story about he is a great writer, and hopefully everything, people can get the to see, about what transpired in that era when it was a violent time in that area. Like, I believe me and my crew put Springfield on the map when it came to the national news level, but it shouldn't have happened to be that way because there was notorious gangsters. Like you said, Big Nose Sam ruled from the 30 to the 83. Mm-hmm. That's 43 years. That's Carlo Gambino, Tony Accardo type shit, And you don't ever hear about them. And, it's a smaller faction, but it's still a boss and a faction of murderous soldiers and, hundreds and dozens of associates and control of major states. Connecticut, Connecticut's a big state with plenty of money. And Massachusetts, Central and Western. Worcester all the way to going into Albany.
Well, Anthony, man, I appreciate you coming in for your second interview. Last interview, millions of people tuned in. And was that your first major interview?
It was. I think that was that was first major one, but I think that was actually my first time doing interviews because I was on probation. I got out of prison in 2017. I got out. I had 3 years supervised release, so I got out right around before that. So I wasn't, looking to get on podcasts, put myself out there, and but yeah, I was glad I did it. It gives it's for it's a way to get yourself out there and get opportunities brought back into you. Other thing besides the book, I have a Discord I'm trying to do with real estate, teaching people and make money with people. Nice. With the wholesale part of that. I'm trying to get a similar to what you got with subscribers, but with a Patreon.
Okay.
With that. So
that's what Joey Merlino does. He has his own Patreon.
Yeah, but that's what YouTube and stories. I'm trying to teach people how to make money and make money with them and partner up with them if they need that help. But yeah, Patreon is a good way, like he's doing. He did the best move he could because he's gonna make money doing that.
Yeah.
They say they're not making it for the money, and
Well, Anthony, man, always a pleasure. Wish you all the best.
Yeah, I wish you the best too. Thanks for having me, and hopefully you get millions of views this time too.
Of course. Till next time.
All right.
Peace.
Yep. Peace.